Have you ever walked into a room and felt something, an invisible presence, a kind of silent echo, before a single word was spoken? Have you ever thought of someone out of the blue, only to receive their message a few moments later? These incidents are often dismissed as coincidences, tricks of the subconscious mind, or neurological hiccups. Yet deep down, part of us knows something else is at play. Not superstition, not fantasy, but a truth that may be stranger than both. Today, we begin not with a scientific term, but with a story. One I rarely share, but that lives in me like a riddle I've spent a lifetime learning to answer. It was winter. The phone rang. On the other end, my mother whispered, "Dad, your grandfather is gone." I felt it before the words. I had sat upright minutes earlier, heart racing, unprovoked. At the time, I told myself it was grief searching for a reason. But the older I get, the more I listen to what I once ignored. We are connected, in ways our rational minds were trained to disbelieve. Today, we will explore one of the most mysterious, misunderstood, and revolutionary concepts in modern physics: quantum entanglement, not as a dry theory, but as a key, a doorway, to a deeper understanding of reality, consciousness, and perhaps ourselves. But before we unravel that thread, let me ask you that: what if the universe wasn't made of things, but of relationships? What if your thoughts could go across space? And what if the fabric of reality itself depended on your presence? This is not the domain of science fiction. This is quantum mechanics, and at the center of it lies a riddle Einstein once called spooky action at a distance. He rejected it, others doubted it, but experiments have confirmed it. Two particles, once connected, remain mysteriously linked instantaneously across vast distances. This is entanglement. But it's not just about particles. It's about intimacy. Let us begin. Imagine two coins. You flip them both. Each can land on heads or tails, right? But imagine you separate them, place them on opposite ends of the earth. Flip one and somehow the other flips too, perfectly synchronized. Not after a delay, instantly. That's a crude analogy for what quantum physicists have witnessed, not with coins, but with particles like photons and electrons, in a strange dance governed not by chance, but by connection. These particles reflect each other's state, regardless of the space between them. But to truly appreciate how profound this is, we must understand where it all began. In 1935, three brilliant minds, Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen, wrote a paper now known as the EPR paradox. In it, they challenged the strange new world quantum theory was proposing. For them, the idea that particles could affect one another faster than the speed of light without any apparent connection was absurd. They believed the theory was incomplete, that there must be some hidden variables, some deeper logic yet undiscovered. Einstein famously quipped, "God does not play dice with the universe." And in saying that, he drew a line between what he believed reality should be, predictable, local, deterministic, and what quantum mechanics appeared to suggest. But here's the twist: for decades, physicists put entanglement to the test. And time after time, the universe seemed to defy Einstein's skepticism. In 1964, physicist John Bell proposed a way to test whether hidden variables could explain the behavior of entangled particles. The results, painstakingly confirmed over decades, showed that no local explanation could account for what was happening. In other words, reality wasn't just weird, it was non-local. Entangled particles don't just behave in predictable patterns, they behave as if they are one thing, regardless of distance, separate but unified, distinct but inseparable. Now, pause, breathe, because this is where most videos end. But for us, This is where it truly begins. What does it mean to live in a world where everything is connected? Not metaphorically, but literally. What does it mean for us, not as physicists, but as people? Let me take you to a hospital room. A woman lies still. Her twin across the ocean feels something shift inside her, an unexplainable pain. She calls, she flies, and arrives just before the final breath. Coincidence, empathy, or something deeper? Science has not proven that human consciousness becomes entangled the way particles do. But science has also not disproven it, and every day thousands share stories that mirror entanglement, not in theory, but in feeling. Here we enter sacred ground, the realm where physics and philosophy, reason and reverence converge. Let's go deeper. Entanglement suggests that what happens to one particle can instantaneously influence another, even if they're light years apart. This isn't a message being sent. It's not a signal moving faster than light. It's something else. It's as if the two particles were never truly separate to begin with. Let that sink in. What if separation is not real? What if the space between you and another is not empty, but full of a relationship that binds you in ways invisible, yet undeniable? The implications are staggering. It means the universe isn't a machine of isolated parts. It's a web of relationship, of correlation, of harmony and discord and resonance. And it means we, our thoughts, our emotions, our presence, may ripple through that web in ways we don't yet understand. The poet Rumi once wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." Entanglement gives that poetic truth a strange kind of scientific backing. But let us not get ahead of ourselves. Next, we'll explore the experiments that changed everything. We'll meet the minds that dared to ask what no one else would. And we'll see how entanglement isn't just a theory in textbooks, but a lens through which to see love, loss, and the miracle of being alive. To understand quantum entanglement is not merely to study particles. It is to question the nature of reality, the meaning of connection, the illusion of isolation. Stay with me. What comes next may change the way you see everything. Let's turn now to one of the most important questions ever asked in modern science. How can two things be separate and yet still one? To answer that, we must return to a man whose name does not echo as loudly as Einstein's, but whose ideas may well have shaken reality more: John Stuart Bell. In 1964, Bell formulated what would become known as Bell's theorem. It was not just a clever bit of mathematics. It was a knife aimed straight at the heart of our understanding of the universe. You see, until Bell, even those who accepted quantum mechanics thought there might still be some kind of hidden explanation, a safety net, some deeper deterministic layer underneath all the weirdness. But Bell showed something extraordinary. If quantum theory is correct, then the universe is not just unpredictable, it is non-local. In other words, the universe doesn't obey the idea that things only affect other things nearby. No. Bell showed that if quantum mechanics was right, then the universe is fundamentally interconnected. The results of measurements made on one particle depend instantly on the measurement of another, even if the two are far apart. To most people, that might seem like a technical nuance, but to those who understood it, it changed everything. Let me explain it in simpler terms. Imagine you and a friend are each given a box. Inside each box is a mysterious sphere. The scientist who hands them to you says, "When you open the box, the sphere will either be red or blue, but the color will only be decided when the box is opened." You and your friend go to opposite sides of the planet. You open your box. It's red. Immediately, without hesitation, You know your friend's sphere must be blue. Now, how did the spheres decide which color to be if it was truly random? How do they always turn out opposite? Did the spheres talk to each other somehow? Bell showed that no matter how cleverly you design the boxes, there is no hidden setting that can explain the results unless you allow one sphere to be instantly affected by the other, even at a distance. This is entanglement, and it's been tested over and over. Most famously, in the 1980s, physicist Alain Aspect conducted experiments in France that confirmed what Bell predicted. In a highly controlled setup, he fired pairs of entangled photons in opposite directions and measured their polarization. What he found was undeniable. The results were correlated in ways that no local theory could account for. And just to silence every doubt, newer experiments closed every loophole. In 2015, several research teams performed what are called loophole-free Bell tests. The verdict: entanglement is real. Not a theory, not a metaphor, a measurable, reproducible, physical truth. Particles separated by kilometers behave as if they are still one system. Now, let's pause here. I want to tell you a story, not from a physics lab, but from life. It was 1997. A woman named Sarah sat by her window in rural Montana, sipping tea. Her twin brother, David, lived in Tokyo. That morning, Sarah suddenly dropped her cup. She felt breathless, cold. A deep unease wrapped itself around her chest. That evening, she got the call. David had collapsed in the Tokyo subway at the exact same moment. Heart failure. He was revived. He lived. But Sarah had felt it, unmistakably, across 5,000 miles. Now, this is anecdotal. It's not peer-reviewed science. But let me ask you, does that make it meaningless? How many times must something happen across cultures, across continents, across time? Before we begin to listen, entanglement does not prove that human thoughts travel like photons, but it gives us, for the first time, a framework, a precedent in nature where distance does not break connection, and that alone is extraordinary. Let us be clear. Entanglement does not allow us to send messages faster than light. There is no telephone through the void. The correlations happen instantly. Yes, but they cannot be used to transmit information in any controllable way. Still, the fact that they happen at all, that two particles remain united after separation, challenges the very foundation of how we define space, time, and self. What does it mean to be separate? We look at the stars and imagine them far away. Yet, if the particles in our bodies once shared space with those of a distant star, might something of that starlight still shimmer within us? Quantum entanglement suggests that the universe is not a place filled with things, but a system woven from relationships. And in that system, nothing ever truly becomes disconnected, not completely. Let me give you another example, this time from technology. In recent years, scientists have successfully entangled particles and sent one of them to a satellite orbiting Earth. Despite being hundreds of kilometers apart, the entangled state remained. This is the basis for quantum teleportation. Not teleporting matter, as in science fiction, but teleporting information about a quantum state. What this proves is simple, yet profound. Entanglement is not fragile. It endures across space, across noise, across time, which leads to a quiet but urgent question. If two particles can remain connected despite distance, what about us? You see, when I speak of entanglement, I don't just mean the physics. I mean the echoes of its principle in our lives. When a mother senses her child is in danger before any call comes, when lovers share dreams across oceans, when a soldier in the field feels a presence that steadies his hand, are these just illusions, or are they entangled moments? Of course, we cannot say for certain. Science is not in the business of certifying spiritual truth, but science has cracked open a door, and now it's up to us whether we walk through it. Because entanglement teaches us something we forget too easily. Nothing is truly alone. Everything is part of something greater. And we, each of us, are threads in a vast and beautiful tapestry of correlation, resonance, and silent communion. In the next part, we'll journey even deeper, not into theory, but into meaning. We'll explore how quantum entanglement reshapes our understanding of choice, identity, and presence, and how, perhaps, it invites us to live, not as isolated minds in separate bodies, but as participants in a reality that is fundamentally connected. Stay with me. The implications have only just begun to unfold. Let's pause a moment. Step away from the particles, the photons, the equations. Let's talk about you. You wake up each morning believing you are separate from others, from the world, from the past, from the stars. You say, this is my life, my body, my mind, my story. But what if that story is incomplete? Quantum entanglement whispers a radical idea that separation is an illusion, not a metaphorical illusion, but a measurable one. That even what we call distance may not be what we think it is. And that identity, as we've been taught to define it, is not fixed, but relational. You see, in classical physics, we inherit a Newtonian idea of a universe like a giant machine, a vast clockwork ticking predictably. Everything made of parts, self-contained, self-existing, bumping into one another like billiard balls. But quantum mechanics shattered that certainty. It revealed a world not made of thin running, but of probability, of clouds, of potential. And in the heart of that quantum world, entanglement tells us particles are not individual, isolated units. They are correlations. They are echoes. They are reflections of a whole. And if reality at its most fundamental level is built not from parts, but from relationships, then what are we? I'll give you a moment. Because this is not a question for scientists. It's a question for the soul. Let me share with you a reflection, one that has haunted me since I first learned of Bell's theorem. If two particles are entangled and one is measured, instantaneously affecting the other, then which one is doing the changing? Who is cause and who is effect? Or, Barshin, are those words even useful anymore? Perhaps at the quantum level, there is no cause, no effect, only relationship, only interbeing. And so I ask, could this be true at other levels of existence? Could it be that my thoughts affect yours, not in the way of telepathy or science fiction, but in the way of presence, in the way of intention? Could it be that the quality of our attention changes the quality of the space between us? Let me offer a simple example, not from theory, but from life. A teacher walks into a classroom. She says nothing, but the students feel it today is different. They straighten up, they listen, they lean in. No words were exchanged, no instructions were given, but something was transmitted. What was it? We call it energy. We call it vibe. But physicists might call it coherence, alignment, a resonance of state. You see, in the quantum world, coherence matters. Entangled particles are not just linked randomly. They are correlated in a way that preserves harmony. When one changes, the other reflects that change without resistance, without delay. That kind of resonance is not just scientific, it is human. When a person walks into a room with calm, centered presence, others feel it. When someone radiates fear or anger, others catch it too. We call this empath. But what if it's something more? What if we are entangled, not just biologically, but emotionally, psychologically, energetically? No, we cannot prove it in a lab yet, but we feel it, we know it. And the science, while cautious, is beginning to listen. Here's a thought: maybe consciousness itself is entangled. Radical, perhaps. But then again, everything about quantum mechanics is. Physicist David Bohm once proposed that what we call consciousness might not be confined to the brain, that it may be a hollow field, a field where the whole is encoded in every part, much like a hologram, where each piece contains the image of the whole. Entanglement supports this view, not directly, but conceptually. It reminds us that information, correlation, and coherence are not confined by proximity, that wholeness can exist even when parts are scattered. And so we must ask again, what does it mean to be me? If part of me exists in you, if my story, my being, is not a closed book, but a shared page. Here's a personal confession. Years ago, I sat in silence at a Zen monastery. I had come seeking peace. Instead, I found paradox. Each time I tried to quiet my mind, it roared louder. But then, something shifted. Not in thought, in presence. I looked up from the floor. A bird was perched on the window. Sunlight bent around its wings. And for a moment, just a moment, I was not a person watching a bird. I was the watching itself. No boundary, no observer, no observed. I had no words for it then. Now I have one: entanglement, not of physics, of being. In that stillness, I saw that identity is not a location. It is a relationship. You are not a self in isolation. You are a point of view in a sea of reflections. Entanglement invites us to rethink not just matter, but meaning. Because if we are not separate, then responsibility changes. What I think affects you. What I ignore affects others. What I heal in myself may ripple into another. It is humbling. But also, it is hope, because it means no act of kindness is ever wasted. No thought of love is ever lost. No silent prayer is ever alone. We live in a participatory universe, not a machine, but a mirror, not a chaos, but a chorus. And you are a note in that cosmic song. Sing with care, sing with courage. Sing as if the stars are listening, because they are. In the next part, we will explore the implications of entanglement for time, free will, and the emerging field of quantum consciousness. And we'll examine the most pressing question of all: if everything is connected, how shall we live? But for now, rest in this truth. You are not alone, and you never were. Let's take a breath. We've spoken of connection, of particles, of people, of presence. But now, we must speak of something even more mysterious: time. You see, entanglement doesn't just blur the lines between distance, it blurs the line between past and future. In most experiments, entangled particles are measured in such a way that one result immediately determines the outcome of the other, no matter when or where it's observed. But some more recent variations go further. They suggest that a choice made now can affect the outcome of something that's already happened. Let me repeat that. The future influencing the past. It's called the delayed choice quantum eraser. And while the mathematics is subtle, the implication is not. It implies that reality doesn't fully crystallize until observation happens, and that the timeline we cling to, past, present, future, may not be as fixed as we imagine. In this light, entanglement becomes more than a physical phenomenon. It becomes a whisper from the universe: time is not what you think it is. So let us ask the next great question: if the future can influence the past, do we truly have free will now? Many would say, of course we do. We choose, we act, we decide. But quantum mechanics introduces nuance. It tells us that until something is observed, its state exists in a cloud of possibility. Only when an interaction, a choice, is made, does that possibility collapse into reality. You are not a passive observer. You are a participant in the creation of reality. Let that sink in. Every moment, you stand at a crossroads of infinite probabilities. And with every act of observation, every conscious decision, you choose not only a path, but a world. Now, that is not to say you control reality like a god, but it does suggest this consciousness matters. Attention matters. Intention matters. Here's an analogy. Imagine the universe is a great novel being written as we read it. The past pages feel fixed, the future chapters unwritten. But what if, in truth, the ink flows both ways? What if our current reading, our conscious awareness, somehow alters not only the next line, but the echo of previous ones? We call that madness, or we call it quantum entanglement. Let me be clear, no physicist claims that you can travel back in time and change the past. That's fantasy. But what some experiments do suggest is the distinction between past and future may be a matter of perspective. At the quantum level, reality is not written in ink. It's written in relationship, and that brings us to consciousness. You may have heard of the term quantum consciousness. It's controversial, it's speculative, and it has sparked fierce debate, but it is not without merit. Some physicists, like Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, have proposed that consciousness may arise not just from electrical activity in the brain, but from quantum processes within microtubules, the structural scaffolding inside neurons. In other words, perhaps the human mind is not a computer, but a quantum field. Perhaps our awareness itself operates at the edge, where time, space, and matter blur. Now, is this proven? No, but is it possible? We must not close our minds just because the terrain is unfamiliar. You see, for centuries, science denied the existence of germs, of atoms, of black holes, until the evidence became too clear to ignore. And now, quantum entanglement sits at that edge again. A phenomenon once dismissed as spooky is now a foundation for quantum computing, quantum encryption, and more. So why not the mind? Why not love? Why not prayer? Let me tell you a story. A young boy named Daniel sat beside his father's hospital bed. The doctors had said it was the end. The machines beeped quietly. The monitors flatlined. But Daniel did not cry. Instead, he closed his eyes. He held his father's hand, and he whispered, "If you can still feel me, squeeze my hand." And then, after a full minute of stillness, he felt it. A slight pressure. A squeeze. The nurse saw nothing. The machine showed nothing. But Daniel knew. Something remained. Call it the body's last twitch, if you like. But I call it entanglement, not in the laboratory sense, but in the soul sense. Because in that moment, two beings were not two. They were one, entangled. And that brings us to the heart of this message. Quantum entanglement is not merely a scientific curiosity. It is a mirror, a reminder that we live not in a cold, mechanical cosmos, but in a living field of interdependence, where thoughts ripple, where presence matters, where the unseen is just as real as the seen. When you hold a child, the atoms in your hands once danced inside stars. When you speak kind words, their vibration touches not just ears, but minds, hearts, cells. And when you love, truly love, that energy is not wasted. It weaves, it resonates, it endures. So what does this mean for how we live? It means that we must act as if everything is connected, because it is. It means that kindness is not optional. It is structural. It means that mindfulness is not a luxury. It is a necessity. It means that attention is sacred, and intention is power. If a photon can influence another across the span of continents, then surely we, beings of memory, emotion, and breath, can do the same, not through force, but through presence, through integrity, through the invisible gravity of a heart aligned with truth. In our final part, we will draw all of this together. We will explore not what entanglement is, but what it asks of us. And we will leave you, not with answers, but with a choice. Because in a universe built on relationship, every choice is a creation. Every thought is a thread, and every action echoes. We've journeyed far, from particles to presence, from physics to the soul, from equations to questions. Now we stand at the threshold of the greatest mystery of all. What do we do with this? Because if quantum entanglement is real, and it is, and if connection is not metaphorical but structural, then we must rethink everything. You see, the great mistake of modern life is not that we are too busy. It is that we are too separate. We live as if our thoughts end at our skulls, as if our choices only affect our own outcomes, as if we are sovereign islands in an indifferent sea. But entanglement whispers otherwise. It says there is no such thing as just your energy. It says what you carry, you radiate. It says what you heal in yourself, you ease in others. You see, this isn't just theory. This is life. When you walk into a room with a heavy heart, others feel it, even if you say nothing. When you meet someone with open presence, they soften, even if they don't understand why. When you meditate in silence, the very frequency of your home begins to change. It's not magic, it's coherence, it's resonance, it's quantum in the deepest sense. Let me give you one last story. A hospice nurse once told me this. She had tended to hundreds of patients in their final hours, and she began to notice something strange. Some passed quickly, quietly. Others lingered, sometimes in pain, sometimes in agitation. She couldn't explain it at first, but then a pattern emerged. Those who were surrounded by unresolved conflict, by strained relationships, by unspoken truths, they struggled. Those who were surrounded by forgiveness, by connection, by peace, they let go with grace. She said, it was like they weren't just dying. They were unwinding from the people they loved. Unwinding like entangled threads being gently released. That, my friend, is not metaphor. That is the poetry of reality. That is the hidden structure beneath all things. And so we return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Have you ever felt something before it happened? Have you ever known without knowing how? Have you ever loved in a way that transcended logic, distance, or time? You were not imagining it. You were remembering something deeper. You were remembering that you were never alone, that you were always, already, connected, entangled, not trapped, not bound, but held, woven, resonating. So what now? What do we do with this? We remember that our presence matters. We remember that our words shape more than opinions. They shape frequency. We remember that every thought is not just internal, it is relational. You want to change the world. Start with how you breathe in a room. Start with how you speak to the ones who don't understand you. Start with how you meet silence, because every act of coherence is a node in the quantum web. Every moment of mindfulness is a recalibration of the field. You do not need to become anything more. You simply need to become aware that you are a tuning fork, a ripple, a radiant point of conscious entanglement in a living universe. And now, you know, not just as knowledge, but as remembrance. You are not the drop, separate from the ocean. You are the entire ocean, curved into a drop of perspective. So hold it gently. Live like the one who knows the field is listening, because it is. Speak like the one who remembers every word has weight. Act like the one who trusts every choice ripples out. Love like the one who understands there is no such thing as other, and rest like the one who knows everything is already connected, not someday, not maybe, now, always, forever. This is entanglement, and this is the invitation.